Afghanistan's Supreme Court building in Kabul was the site of a deadly terrorist attack early this morning. The Ministry of Public Health in Afghanistan said at least 20 people were killed, while 41 were wounded and taken to Kabul hospitals. As of right now, there was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attack, in which police said an apparent suicide bomber targeted Supreme Court employees leaving their offices at the end of the working day. In response to the attack, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani condemned the attack as a crime against humanity and an unforgivable act. The Supreme Court was also the target of a bomb in June of So here's the thing. We're going to go through some examples because while the Afghan president says it's a crime against humanity and an unforgivable act, it is by no means a unique act in Afghanistan. The judiciary appears to attract a disproportionate amount of violent attacks and terrorist attacks. And so we want to go over just a few. Supreme Court was the target of a bomb in June of 2013 when a suicide bomber drove an explosives-packed car into a bus carrying court employees, including judges. The Taliban did claim responsibility for that attack, and I would assume they will claim responsibility for today's attack. And since then, security at the court has been increased with large concrete blast walls, which perhaps did something to protect against today's terror attack, but unfortunately did not save the 20 people who were killed. Back in 2015, a Taliban bomber killed 5 prosecutors from the Attorney General's office in Kabul, and last year, Taliban gunmen stormed a legal office in Logar province, killing 7 people, including 2 prosecutors. The same militant group killed 4 people at a provincial courthouse in Ghazni in 2016. So there are almost daily attacks of this sort, certainly weekly attacks in the form of large-scale bombings. But the judiciary and the court system in particular has been regularly targeted by the Taliban and other militant groups. And if you are concerned about the long-term viability of the Afghani government, which controls somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of the territory of Afghanistan at present, from what I have read, this is incredibly concerning and certainly a tragedy for the families of the many who died.
And it doesn't even take into account 36 people either earlier, well, I guess it was last month in January, that were killed when suicide bombs in Parliament, in front of Parliament, yes, in Kabul. So a lot of the things that John just read are from places around Afghanistan. Now they're in Kabul. They're at the Supreme Court, and they were at the Houses of Parliament last month, and you can see some footage. I think this is probably from today.
Yes, this is B-roll from the attack today.
Yeah, and 35 people wounded as well. 20 confirmed dead and 35 wounded there. And security is not what we said it was, and certainly it's not as safe there. And ISIS is there as well. Islamic State is now active. So this is, like John said, also probably Taliban. I don't know if they've taken credit for it, but it's also ISIS presence in Afghanistan now.
Yeah. And look, as you pointed out, I mean, the fact that they're striking not just in the outlying areas or areas bordering Taliban-controlled territory, but inside of the capital city, regularly attacking and killing dozens of people, that is incredibly scary and also seemingly impossible to stop. And look, we have to acknowledge the historic context that led to this. To some extent, I mean, when we went in, we toppled the Taliban, which was an absolutely horrific, repressive regime. That is a part of this context. When we send troops in and we keep them there for more than a decade and then eventually pull them out, all of those acts, whether they're active or passive acts, do have an effect on the situation there. And so, to some extent, off into the near future, the midterm, we are going to be, to some extent, responsible for the security situation in Afghanistan. To some extent, we broke it, and even if we've moved out, we did technically buy it, at the very least morally.
There's a post-game to every Young Turks show. You can get that by being a member. tytnetwork.com/join.